struggling to understand fast conversations. Maria was always dedicated to her English studies. She studied every night, took notes, and tried her best. She could read well and write clearly. But there was one thing that always frustrated her. She couldn't understand people when they spoke fast. Whenever she watched a movie, she felt lost. The words seemed to blend together into a confusing sound. Maria knew many of these words when she saw them written. But hearing them at normal speed was difficult. One day, during English class, her teacher played a video. The video was a simple conversation about weekend activities. Maria tried to follow, but she quickly became confused. The characters spoke too fast. Maria could barely catch the first sentence before another began. Her classmates seemed to understand more than she did. Why is this so hard? Maria thought. After class, Maria decided to talk to her teacher. She wanted to improve but didn't know how. Mrs. Clara, I can read and write well, but I struggle to understand when people speak fast. Mrs. Clara smiled kindly. This is a common problem, she said. The spoken language can be challenging, especially when it's fast. Maria sighed. I feel like I'll never understand normal conversations. Mrs. Clara looked at her with understanding. You're not alone, Maria. Many students feel the same way. The good news is, it will get better with practice. Maria was curious. Practice? What should I do differently? Mrs. Clara explained patiently. Many students try to understand everything at once. But the secret is to start with smaller, slower pieces of audio. Focus on short phrases and repeat them until you feel comfortable. Maria nodded but still had doubts. But how can I practice if I don't have anyone to talk to? Mrs. Clara suggested something simple. You can start by listening to beginner podcasts or videos with subtitles. Pause after each sentence and repeat what you hear. Over time, your brain will get used to the rhythm. Maria decided to try this method. At home, she found a beginner-level podcast. The speaker spoke slowly and clearly. Maria could finally understand. She paused after each sentence and repeated it out loud. It was hard at first, but Maria was determined. By the end of the week, she noticed some improvement. One day, while watching a movie with English subtitles, Maria understood a few sentences. She was still confused by the faster parts, but she didn't feel as lost. I'm getting better, Maria thought with a smile. As weeks passed, Maria began to challenge herself. She started watching YouTube videos without subtitles. At first, it was overwhelming. But she remembered to pause and repeat the words she knew. Soon, Maria could follow parts of the conversations. One day, she watched an interview with a famous actor. The questions were fast, but she understood some key phrases. "This is amazing," Maria thought. She wasn't perfect yet, but she was improving. Maria continued practicing every day. She listened to different accents and faster conversations. It was still difficult, but each time, she understood a little more. In class, her teacher asked the students to talk about their daily routines in English. Maria felt nervous but decided to try. When it was her turn, she stood up. Her heart was racing, but she took a deep breath. She said, "Every morning, I wake up at 7 a.m. and have breakfast." Her classmates smiled, and Mrs. Clara clapped. "Well done, Maria. You did it." Maria felt proud of herself. She realized that speaking English wasn't as scary as she thought. After class, Mrs. Clara came to her. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Keep practicing." Maria smiled and promised she would continue. From that day on, Maria spoke more and more. She still felt nervous at times, but she didn't let it stop her. Each time she spoke, her confidence grew. She learned that making mistakes was part of the process, and that each mistake brought her closer to fluency. Now, Maria practices English every day. She talks to her friends and even strangers. She knows that with time and practice, she will keep improving. This is a story for everyone. Learning a new language takes patience and dedication. But the most important thing is to keep trying. Just like Maria, you can overcome any difficulty with practice.